Okay, so imagine this. You've just crossed the Atlantic, the year is 1651,
Oh, wow.
and you're trying to start this new life in New England.
Okay.
And you're in this untamed wilderness. I mean, just think about it. Dense forests, the smell of pine in the air, and also this feeling of the unknown.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
And faith is really your compass in this world. But lurking in the shadows is this fear of the devil.
Right.
Now, this isn't the Salem story that you might know.
Okay.
This is Springfield, Massachusetts.
Oh, interesting.
And this is a town where accusations of witchcraft are gonna, rip it apart.
It's amazing how these stories just pull you in, right? Like they give us this look into ordinary people, but in these crazy situations.
Yeah.
And, we think of witch hunts as these like frenzied, chaotic events.
Yeah.
But in Springfield, it was more of a slow burn.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was this creeping fear that just seeped into like every single day.
So to help us navigate this historical maze, we have The Ruin of All Witches
Yeah.
by Malcolm Gaskill.
Oh, great book.
And this isn't just a typical history book.
Right.
It's like this portal to this time where anxieties about, the supernatural were all mixed up with the struggles of building a life in a new world.
Gaskill is really great in the way he approaches this.
Yeah.
Because he zeroes in on these personal stories like those of Mary and Hugh Parsons.
Okay.
This couple whose marriage just becomes this like a crucible for all the anxieties and suspicions going on in this tiny community.
Right.
And through them, we see how quick whispers can turn into accusations.
Yeah?
And how personal grudges can get disguised in the language of, the supernatural.
Okay, so let's back up a little bit and set the stage for all this drama.
Okay.
So it's the 1630s, and you have this wave of English settlers coming over.
Right.
They are driven by this longing for religious freedom and, of course, economic opportunity.
Of course.
And they're going on this really perilous journey to New England.
Mm-hmm.
So what was it about this new world that was so alluring to them?
Well, it's a lot of different things, all pulling them in. On the one hand, you had these super devout Puritans fleeing what they saw as the corruption of the Church of England.
Okay.
And they were determined to build this city upon a hill.
Right, like a beacon of all that's good and righteous.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it wasn't all about saving their souls.
Right.
Many were also drawn to the idea of actually owning land.
Okay.
A chance to break free from the rigid social hierarchy of England and, like you said, carve their own destiny.
It's interesting how this desire for a fresh start,
Yeah.
both spiritually and materially, keeps popping up in history.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the pioneers heading west in the 19th century.
Right.
Or even people today seeking new lives in different countries.
It's a powerful force, isn't it? That urge to find new frontiers, to build something better for yourself and your family.
Absolutely.
But for these early New England settlers, all that idealism was seriously tested by the realities of this new environment.
And here's where things get interesting.
Okay.
So they want to build this city upon a hill, but they're surrounded by this vast, untamed wilderness.
Right. A place just full of potential dangers, both real and imagined.
Yeah, so how did this environment, this constant uncertainty, shape their worldview?
Well, the wilderness was more than just a physical challenge.
Yeah.
It was like a spiritual battleground for them.
Oh, wow.
The Puritans really saw the forest as this domain of the devil, a place where their faith was under constant attack.
So every weird sound or unexplained illness could be a sign of Satan's work.
Exactly.
So the fear of the unknown, those very real dangers, became intertwined with their religious beliefs.
Yes.
And that created this breeding ground for suspicion and superstition.
Precisely. And when you add in the hardships they faced, things like crop failures, outbreaks of disease conflicts with the Native Americans,
Oh, yeah.
all those anxieties just got amplified.
So in the face of all that, it was comforting to think there was a tangible enemy, right? Someone or something to blame.
Right, a force of evil they could point to and fight.
And that's where the witch becomes so powerful, right?
Exactly.
It's this scapegoat, this explanation for all the bad things happening to them.
The witch embodies all their fears, a real-life representation of the unseen forces they believe are working against them.
And it's in this atmosphere of fear and uncertainty that the story of Springfield, and especially Mary and Hugh Parsons, unfolds.
Exactly.
Now, at the heart of this is William Pynchon, the founder of Springfield.
Right.
And he kind of embodies this duality we've been talking about.
Yes.
The devout Puritan leader and the shrewd businessman all rolled into one.
He's a fascinating character.
Yeah.
Deeply devout, committed to building this godly community, but also a practical and ambitious entrepreneur.
Okay.
He saw how the Connecticut River Valley was perfect for trade and agriculture.
Right.
And he was key in getting settlers to come and build this thriving settlement.
Sounds like he was ahead of his time in a way.
Yeah, bridging the gap between the spiritual and material aspirations of the colony.
And Springfield seems to reflect that duality too, right?
Absolutely. It was founded on religious principles,
Yeah.
but also driven by economic goals.
Right. So this tension between piety and prosperity is a constant theme.
A recurring theme that eventually plays a part in the events that are about to unfold.
It sounds like this tension, this constant push and pull between religious ideals and the realities of building a life in a new world created this pressure cooker environment.
Yeah, it did.
And that's when the fear of witchcraft, the whispers of suspicion, they really start to take hold.
Absolutely. And as we dig deeper into Mary and Hugh Parsons' story, we'll see how these anxieties, these tensions bubbling under the surface, well, they erupt with devastating consequences. All right, so let's shift our focus now to Mary and Hugh Parsons.
Okay.
This couple, their story really becomes like a mini version of all those anxieties and suspicions that were haunting Springfield.
Okay.
Now, Mary Lewis, she was originally from Wales and came to Springfield for a fresh start, She had escaped a pretty tough past.
Oh, wow.
So she really embodies that hope for a better life that drew so many to this new world.
Right.
But Hugh Parsons, he's a bit more mysterious.
Okay.
We don't know as much about his background. Yeah.
But he was definitely a man of practical skills, a brickmaker by trade.
Okay, so two individuals drawn to this new community, each with their own baggage and hopes.
Right.
What brought them together?
Well, for Mary, Hugh represented stability,
Okay.
a chance to build a family and find that security that had always eluded her.
Right.
He might have been drawn to her resilience, her strength in the face of hardship.
Interesting.
But as we'll find out, their relationship wasn't exactly a fairy tale.
So even in this city upon a hill, human relationships were still messy and complicated.
Oh, absolutely.
Was it their marriage that first caught the attention of the community?
It wasn't so much the marriage itself,
Okay.
but how it started to fall apart under all the weight of misfortune and suspicion.
Oh,
The Parsons, they suffered a terrible loss. Their baby died.
that's awful.
And in a community where infant mortality was sadly pretty common,
Yeah.
well, these events were often seen as, part of a spiritual battle.
It's hard to imagine the grief they must have felt.
Oh, absolutely. But how did this tragedy turn into accusations of witchcraft?
Well, in the Puritan mind, any misfortune could be seen as a sign of God's anger,
Right.
or even worse, the work of the devil.
Right.
So Mary, struggling with her grief and maybe looking for an explanation for this unbearable loss,
Yeah.
she became fixated on the idea of witchcraft.
Okay.
She started seeing signs of it everywhere, whispering accusations against her neighbors.
So the fear of witchcraft, which had been kind of simmering beneath the surface,
Right.
found a way out through Mary's grief and anxiety.
Exactly. And what's striking is how fast these whispers turned into official accusations.
Wow.
Mary may be wanting to feel in control again in a world that felt so chaotic.
Yeah.
She accused her neighbor, Mercy Marshfield, of bewitching her and causing her baby's death.
It seems like a classic case of scapegoating, finding someone to blame for things beyond their control.
Right.
But how did the community react to these accusations? Did they just automatically believe Mary?
What's interesting is that even with all this fear and religious fervor, there was still a sense of, due process, a need for evidence.
Okay.
They didn't just take Mary's word for it. The authorities investigated her claims,
Nay.
but in the end, they found them to be baseless.
Really?
In fact, Mary was actually charged with slander for making false accusations.
So even in a society so deeply rooted in religious belief, there was a recognition that they needed evidence, a semblance of fairness.
Exact.
Seems like a flicker of rationality in a world that was often ruled by superstition.
It really does. And this highlights how complex and ever-changing the legal landscape was at the time.
Yeah.
Belief in witchcraft was widespread, for sure.
Right.
But there was this growing emphasis on tangible proof on legal procedures.
Okay.
But the setback for Mary, this failed attempt to find someone to blame for her misfortune, it didn't calm her anxieties.
Right.
If anything, it made them worse.
Oh, no.
And her suspicions soon turned inwards toward her own home.
Wait, you're saying she started to suspect her own husband of witchcraft?
Yes.
What made her think that?
The reasons are complicated and very much tied up in the dynamics of their marriage.
Okay.
Hugh Parsons, from what we know, was a brooding, quiet man.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't really fit into the community.
Right.
His silence, his inability or maybe unwillingness to conform to their expectations,
Yeah.
what made him an outsider.
So in a society that valued conformity and outward piety, his difference, his quiet nature became suspicious.
Exactly. For the Puritans, silence could mean guilt, a
Oh,
way of hiding evil intentions.
right.
And Mary, already consumed by her own anxieties and suspicions,
Yeah.
she projected those fears onto Hugh.
Oh.
She started to see his every action, every word as proof that he was involved with the devil.
It's chilling to see how easily fear can twist how we see things,
It is.
how it can make us see threats, even in the people closest to us.
And this tendency to project our fears onto others to find scapegoats for our anxieties,
Right.
it's not just a 17th century thing, unfortunately.
Yeah.
It's a human thing that's popped up in different forms throughout history.
Makes you think.
It does.
It makes me wonder how the community reacted to Mary's accusations against her husband. Did they believe her? Did they share her suspicions about Hugh?
The community was split.
Oh, really?
Some felt sorry for Mary. They saw her as a victim of unseen forces.
Right.
Others were more skeptical. They questioned her claims.
Okay.
But here's the fascinating part. Mary didn't just accuse Hugh.
Oh,
In a twist that shows just how deep her inner turmoil was, she also confessed to being a witch herself.
she accused herself.
Yes.
I don't understand that. Why would she do that?
It's complicated and there are probably several things going on.
Yeah.
It's possible that after accusing her neighbor and then her husband,
Mm-hmm.
she felt pressured to stick with the story she had created.
Right.
Maybe she started to believe she was tainted by evil, too.
Wow.
Or maybe she saw a confession as a way to get sympathy or attention.
It's a stark reminder of how fear and social pressure can really warp our perceptions,
It is.
even make us doubt our own sanity. So what happened next? Did these accusations against Hugh and even herself lead to a trial?
The accusations against Mary and Hugh, they eventually reached the authorities in Boston,
Okay.
the seat of power in the Massachusetts Bay Colony.
Right.
And it's there in the colonial court that the story takes a surprising turn. So the case goes to Boston, and what was the atmosphere like there? Were they as caught up in the witch hunt frenzy as the people back in Springfield?
Right.
Well, you have to remember that this was still a time when pretty much everyone believed in witchcraft,
Even the educated folks.
even them. But in Boston, there was this growing emphasis on a more rational approach to law, you know?
So they weren't dismissing the accusations outright,
No, not at all.
but they were more cautious, more demanding of proof.
Exactly. The court in Boston, they took the accusations seriously,
Mm.
but they also really stressed the need for solid, verifiable evidence.
Okay.
They looked closely at the testimonies from Springfield,
Hmm.
and what they found was a lot of hearsay, superstition, and personal vendettas disguised as proof of witchcraft.
So it seems like they were trying to distinguish between a genuine belief in the supernatural
Right.
and the need for a fair legal process.
Yes. And this shift in legal thinking, this focus on due process and evidence,
Yeah.
it was a major turning point in the history of witch hunts.
Interesting.
It marked a move away from just blindly accepting accusations
Right.
towards a more critical and skeptical approach.
So what happened with Mary and Hugh Parsons? Did this more rational approach to justice win out?
Well, to the surprise of many back in Springfield, both Mary and Hugh were acquitted of witchcraft.
Wow.
The court acknowledged that the people who testified against them truly believed what they were saying,
Yeah.
but they concluded that the evidence just wasn't strong enough to convict them.
That's a remarkable outcome, especially considering how often accusations of witchcraft led to tragedy.
It is.
So what became of Mary and Hugh after their acquittal? Did they go back to Springfield?
Their lives took different paths after the trial.
Oh.
Mary, she wanted a fresh start and eventually remarried. Seems like she found some stability in the end.
That's good to hear.
Hugh, though, he remained a troubled figure.
Really?
He struggled to fit back into the community, always carrying the weight of those accusations.
It's a reminder that even when justice prevails,
Yeah.
the scars of suspicion and fear can last long after the actual events have faded.
Absolutely. And it raises a bigger question.
Okay.
If the witch hunts weren't just about blindly believing in witchcraft,
Right.
but also about social anxieties, economic pressures, personal vendettas, and this desire for control,
Yeah.
how do those themes resonate with us today?
It makes you think, doesn't it?
It really does.
We tend to look back at history and judge those who persecuted others out of fear and superstition.
Mm-hmm.
But are we really that different today?
Yeah.
I mean, don't we have our own witch hunts, our own ways of demonizing anyone who's different or challenges the way things are?
Yeah, think about how we label and ostracize people based on their political beliefs,
Right.
or how fast rumors and accusations can spread online, leading to online mobs and ruined reputations.
It's sobering to realize that our capacity for fear, suspicion, and scapegoating hasn't really gone away.
It hasn't. And that's perhaps the most important lesson we can take from this deep dive into 17th century Springfield,
Yeah.
by understanding what really fueled the witch craze.
Right. These beliefs, anxieties, social dynamics.
Yeah, exactly.
We can gain a deeper understanding of our own human tendencies.
And hopefully learn to handle them in a more compassionate and just way.
We've only scratched the surface of this fascinating story.
We have.
For those who want to explore more about Mary and Hugh, the turbulent history of Springfield, and the broader context of the witch craze in New England, I highly recommend The Ruin of All Witches by Malcolm Gaskill.
A fantastic book.
It's a really captivating read that'll challenge your assumptions and leave you thinking about the enduring questions of human nature and the fragility of justice.
And we'd love to hear your thoughts on this episode. What surprised you? What resonated with you? What questions are still swirling around in your head? Share your insights with us on social media, and let's keep the conversation going.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.